Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. My name is Daniel, and today in this video we'll be covering a game in the 2021 Kings Island Warmup. It was my round 6 game, my final game of the tournament, and in fact my online rating at the time was 1446. So let's take a look at what happened in the critical moment of this game. So I was playing black, and here my opponent, he played the move knight to d1. Quite a passive move in fact, however it does set up a double attack on my knight. With the rook and the bishop, and it's only defended once by my bishop. And here, since this is a critical moment, I thought for quite a while. I was trying to determine the best move, and I thought for about 10 minutes here. So the reason why was because I realized it was the double attack, but I wasn't too sure how to address it. So in fact, actually in the game, I should mention in the game I played the best move, which is d4. So we'll cover that last. So I considered a couple of possibilities here. So I wanted to move my knight, however it was pinned to my bishop. So basically if I move my knight, I have to be careful where to move it in order to protect my bishop. So for example, if I play knight to c6, then there's bishop takes f6 and I would lose this game. There was also the other option of playing knight to g4. However, I considered this move knight to g4 and I thought it was a bit passive. However, because after let's say f3, kicking my knight away, I would probably need to take the bishop first. So bishop takes, then after knight takes, and I drop back my knight. I thought I didn't really have enough forces to really create any type of attack, since his position is really passive with all his pieces on the first and second rank. I didn't really see any direct way of attacking my opponent. So I didn't really want to do this either. So I still need to protect the knight, so I also considered moves such as queen to c7. Queen to c7 I didn't really like also because there's simply bishop takes, and after bishop takes, then there's knight to e3, and then white starts getting active again with some pressure on this pawn, and I didn't really like this. So since there's pressure on this pawn, I also considered the move queen to d6. So after say knight to e3, then there's less threats on this pawn since I also have the queen, the rook, and the bishop as well. However, here there's the move. The computer suggests the move queen to h1, which is quite ludicrous. I guess the threat is to attack this pawn on h6. However, here I didn't really like this either because after knight to e3, despite white not having as much pressure on this pawn, white still starts to get active, which I find kind of annoying, and I can't play this move d4 because then there's simply knight to c4, and then I have to trade off more pieces, so I didn't like this. So in fact, I settled on another move, which is this move d4, which I played in the game. D4 is actually really useful because firstly it prevents knight to e3, so white can't really get active. So white's knight has to stay passive as it really doesn't have any squares, and both of these squares are controlled by my d4 pawn here. Secondly, it also locks off this bishop. This bishop now has to stare at this pawn, and it can't really do much. Thirdly, it actually opens up my own bishop's line of sight. I can play bishop to d5 in the future since I opened up this diagonal. And this diagonal, the queen is also on this diagonal, so it's very nice for me. So in fact in the game, here he plays f5, and here I continue with my idea of playing bishop to d5. So now I'm lining up a threat with the queen, and basically he's about to lose material in this case because any queen move, I simply have knight to f3 next move, which forks the king and the rook, and this bishop on d5 is doing wonders of supporting this knight on f3. Here in fact he plays rook to e4, just blockading, and now he has both major pieces on this diagonal, which is great for me. I simply take. Taking is actually not the best move in this case. Computer actually suggests playing the move knight to g4, getting the knight out of harm's way, and potentially setting up threats in the future. However, here I was materialistic, so I decided to take the rook first, which isn't a bad move either. Queen takes e4. Here I drop my knight back to g6 since it's still attacked by the f pawn. Here he plays knight to f2. Here I play rook to e8. Rook f to e8, setting up another attack on the queen. Plays queen back to f3. I tried to go for a queen trade since I'm up I'm up in exchange, so trading off the pieces would be beneficial for me. He plays bishop to g2. I gladly trade off the queens. And here I play the move b6, simply avoiding any possibilities of bishop takes b7 in the future. plays bishop to a3. And also keep in mind, I have this really nice dark square pawn structure here, which really nicely negates his dark squared bishop. I play a5, continuing the trend of putting all my pawns on dark squares in order to negate his bishop. Here he plays king to g2, trying to maybe play rook to h1 in the future. Play rook to d6, plays rook to h1, and I simply drop my bishop back. So now I've consolidated, and I have this really nice clump of pieces around my king, defending my king really nicely, and also protecting this pawn on h6 with this move bishop to g7. Here he plays d3, just a random move. He doesn't really have much to do. He places his knight on this really nice square on e4 though. I play rook back to d8. He plays g4. And here I transfer my knight into this nice square on d5. Potential threat, potentially wanting to end up on the square on e3 or maybe even c3 depending on the situation. Or maybe even b4. He plays bishop back to c1, simply trying to stop me from playing knight to e3. So here I play knight to b4, since now his bishop is no longer covering this a3 square. So I make sure not to put my knight at the square where the bishop is covering, because usually a trade of knight for bishop is usually beneficial. However, due to this really nice dark square blockade here that I have, his bishop is really passive, and in fact I don't really want his bishop. In fact, his knight would be really strong on any of these three squares that I pointed out. So here I play knight to b4. He plays bishop back to d1, having to protect this pawn. And white's position here is actually really passive if we take a quick glance, because all three pieces are on the back rank. He only has this knight on e4, which is actually it's not really actually doing much. It's just on an outpost square, and I have both of these rooks. This rook is on a semi-open file, and in the future I can maybe break it open with f5 at some point once this g pawn moves. So here I play my back to d5, simply just playing tickle and seeing what squares open up and what squares I can go to in the future. Plays king to f3. I play knight back to e7. He plays f5. So f5, the threat is obviously f6, forking the bishop and the knight, with this knight supporting on e4. So here I play the move knight back to d5. So now if he plays f6, I can simply take with either the bishop or the knight. And here he plays the move bishop takes h6. So in fact I actually hang this pawn by accident, so here he actually manages to win a pawn, with also this move f5 also helps this as it opens up the bishop's line of sight. Here he play bishop takes h6, rook takes h6, and I'm very happy with this trade because with locking in his bishop, I actually also locked in my bishop, and since this queenside structure is mainly closed, my knight will do wonders here. So here I play king to g7, trying to take away his rook. Plays rook back to h1. I play f6, so that there's no threat of maybe playing g5, f6 in the future. He plays king back to e2. Here I strike with knight to c3. So king to e2 actually pins his knight to the king. So here I have this move knight to c3, and he can't take because it's illegal, as the rook would take the king then. So here he moves his king, and here I win a pawn. And now the positions opened up. I have the open file for my rooks, and in fact here it was really simple. I just mopped up all the pawns, and slowly I promoted to a queen, and I checkmated in the end with this final position, with all three of my pieces smothering the king in the corner. So hope you all enjoyed this game. Hope you all enjoyed the really nice positional richness of this game with the move d4 completely blockading his potential threats, and this move d4 opened up a lot of ideas for me, and it was actually really beneficial for me, and it was a really positional game. And in fact, this win actually got me my first tournament victory. I ended up getting 5.5 out of 6 in this tournament, and with this win I was able to get first place. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and yeah, thanks.